talking to machines. Trend number 2 is that social media is mobile. As I noticed that a few people here have iPhones or Blackberries, other types of smartphone. How many people on those iPhones or Blackberries use them to access Twitter or Facebook or? Yeah. So this kind of interesting looking infographic, each circle is a social network, and then depending on how much it overlaps, this big middle one is how many people use that for. Use it on mobile, so you can see something like Twitter is used more on mobile devices than it is on desktop. And just another kind of quote to throw in, 37% of UK smartphone users, so a smartphone is loosely any phone that you can download and install software on, so anything that's not like an old kind of Nokia brick phone. Have a social networking app on their phones which they use at least once a week. But again, it's fairly kind of mundane, but it's also massively exciting because if people are using their phones to access the internet, if you've spent, 10 days and crafting a blog post which has gone through 2 weeks of sign-off and then formal people have kind of poked and prodded it, when you want someone to read that, you want them to be sat down at a desktop with no distractions, kind of in a state of flow, reading every kind of perfectly legally crafted word. In reality, they're going to be standing behind someone in Tesco's, listening to music, with their kind of child tugging at their arm, kind of hating the person in front of them, and they're going to consume about 1% of what you want them to consume. And it's really significant to start thinking about what you're putting out there and how people might be kind of taking that on, but also the possibilities of that. Twitter works because it's really bite-sized. People don't have time to read 500 words, but 140 characters just seems to work. So start thinking about kind of how people will be consuming your message. And it will overtake desktop. So it's largely predicted. I think this is one from Morgan Stanley, which is about a year out of date. But more recently, analysts have predicted that next year in 2012 that internet use will be overtaken, desktop to be overtaken by mobiles, which is massive for any kind of content consumer or creator. It's huge. So that's trend number 2, so the internet or social. When I say the internet is by and large social nowadays. It's quite hard to find a website which doesn't have some kind of social functionality. And then trend number 3, going on from yours, kind of what happens when you've got all of this information, when machines are talking to machines, when you've got tons of different information coming into your phone, and you're kind of looking at your phone whilst you're watching television, whilst you're having an argument with your partner. What happens when all of that stuff happens, basically, and also what happens when all of that information is available. So if everything that someone ever said to you, be it a colleague or a loved one or a friend, if you could check that immediately, what would that do to the world? Or every time a politician or a business leader or someone in a shop, if you could immediately kind of check it against Wiki or something that actually told the truth, that's incredibly scary. And it kind of ends in this kind of thing around overload. And we kind of thoroughly believe at Nixon McInnes that people are starting to kind of really push back against the internet. It is too much. I find it occasionally quite stressful, and if I've been working really hard, I just have to kind of go on a bike ride, and if I go on holiday, the best thing is not having any mobile reception. It's absolute bliss. Because it is quite bad for you. Not that you shouldn't go out and do it. But we operate in this kind of continuous state of partial attention. And this is this kind of medically recognised term now that, going on from what you said about, is it distracting? Yes, because you're constantly paying attention to about 10 different things. I'm talking to you now, I'm fairly kind of concentrated on you, but I'll still be thinking about other stuff, about my work and what I'm going to eat later on, and etc., etc. But when you're at work, you're sitting there, you're writing a PowerPoint document, you're listening to email, you've got phones ringing, you've got kind of Twitter happening, you've got someone on Yammer talking about something. That's quite bad for you, and it's quite bad for what you're kind of, the stuff that you're doing, and you're not kind of properly concentrating on anything. And people are starting to kind of really push back. So this is the Web 2 suicide machine. So if you don't really have the time to go into these different networks and kind of manually remove yourself from them. This website makes it super duper handy. So you go in, you put in your username, you kind of click on the noose, and that's it, you're gone. And they would have a Facebook logo here, but Facebook sued them because lots of people are actually using this. And I don't know if any of your friends on Facebook have done it, but I've seen quite a few of mine recently saying, you know, bugger this, it's too much, and kind of and dropping out. So yeah, the reason that I kind of really hammer home this one to clients is that think about what you're putting out there. You know, it's great that every client's getting into Twitter and a blog and a YouTube channel, but if you're not adding anything that's kind of helping the world or helping your customers or supporters or your employees, then why are you doing it? You're kind of adding to the noise. So there are my 3 trends. Like I've been saying quite a few times, social media isn't rocket science. As much as people like me will tell you it's kind of really complicated and difficult, it's basically talking to people online. But there are kind of a few principles that, if you know them, will really kind of help you plan stuff, measure stuff, talk to kind of maybe people in the company that might be barriers or cynics. So yeah. This is the 1990 rule. So this kind of came about from a group of American academics looking at online behaviour on Dig, which is a bookmarking site, Wikipedia, YouTube, and Yahoo. And they wanted to find out, you know, does everyone use a website in the same way? And the truth is very much no. And what they found, taking YouTube as the example, is that 1% of people on YouTube at that time, this is fairly old, but 1% of people on YouTube were creating. So they were the people uploading videos, you know, filming their baby or cat and actually getting stuff on there. 9% of people were editing, so they were the people that are going on, giving it 5 stars, saying that's an amazing cat. And 90% of people were, you know, like normal people, just watching stuff, going onto YouTube, laughing at it, but moving on. And why this is really key is that if you can think about kind of your blog or your Twitter feed or your social network, whatever it might be, in these ways, and think, what are we doing to kind of cater to these different types of behaviours, and how are we measuring that, then it's got a much better chance of succeeding than if you just create a blog and assume that everyone will want to comment. Because it's only these people that will want to comment. You know, you're not taking into account the amount of people that just come on, read it and move on, and you get disheartened and think, we've only had 3 comments, that's a bit rubbish, let's not do this again. Where actually that 3 comments is indicative of a much larger group of people reading. And also from a measurement point of view, it's great. But like I said, that's fairly old, and that's moved on since then. So this is from a group called Forrester, who are a very well-respected kind of research firm. And they have built this into 7 different groups now, which makes it more complicated. And I'll put a link to this on the bit.ly, it's all publicly available. You can kind of look in much more detail. But you can see the different types of people and the percentages of what they are. So you can see kind of from this information being made, this was about 2006, 2007, and this was kind of the creator number. The creator number is now increased to 24%. And this is of kind of general public. So people are creating conversationalists, so these are people that update statuses on social networking sites and Twitter. Critics, again, so people who kind of go onto Amazon, will leave a copy or a review of a book, go onto TripAdvisor, talk about the hotel they stayed in. Collectors, it's a fairly weird behaviour, that's why it's one of the smaller ones, but collectors are people that kind of go online and tag stuff. These amazing people that kind of are really into, say, Doctor Who, and I go online and I find all the information about Doctor Who and kind of segment it, collect it and put it into one space. And they're great because they kind of make kind of sense of the chaos. Joiners, people that join stuff. Spectators, so the vast majority, people that just kind of take on board stuff. And then inactives, so the percentage of people that are inactive, this is a general cut of the US population, 17%. But helpfully, if you're launching a campaign and you want to know your target audience and where they fall into this, you can use this tool. You go to Forrester.com, or if you just Google Forrester Technographic, you can put in age range, country and gender, and it will let you know of your target market what the different percentages are. This is really, really awesome. It's freely available. And then, you know, you can use this as a basis for any kind of campaign planning. If you're looking at your workforce and thinking, actually, you know, what do our workforce likely to be doing online? It's a great resource to have. We always say of our clients, the very first step is just to look at all of the different properties that you have and work out where they fall, and then how much influence and control you have over each one. And this is the kind of the most interesting part. That's where if people are kind of loving you or hating you, you don't own it, you're not controlling it, but you've earned it whether you like it or not. And this is the most powerful part because it's the largest and it's where people have the most trust. You know, if they come onto here and see Bro & Dolphin and they see the kind of company description, list of services, you know, they kind of know what you do. Whereas they can go onto LinkedIn and see 10 of their colleagues saying, I've worked with those guys, they really know their stuff. Speak to so-and-so in this department, she's great. That's earned, and you can't buy that, and it's amazingly powerful. And what you can do once you know what they are is you can link them together. So I saw a great presentation from the guys at Sony Ericsson. They're not a client of ours, we didn't do this. But they really wanted to ramp up their Facebook fans, and they had kind of an objective in mind because they knew that they could sell to these people and they could sell more phones, so it wasn't just a kind of a rudimentary measure. But they thought, well, if we that's an earned space, but if we bring it onto an owned space, which is SonyEricsson.com, then we will generate a lot more traffic. So they just did something really simple. They brought in Facebook. You can bring in it's called Facebook Open Graph, and it's just a list of Facebook functionality that you can bring into other sites. So you go on SonyEricsson.com, you like a phone, that's reflected on Facebook, and they went from, I think it's like 900,000 fans to 3 million in 8 months with very little paid spend, just for a few simple web tweaks, which is phenomenal, and they see lots of financial return from that. And then a client of ours, WWF. So it doesn't just have to be online. This is an email of theirs that goes out to Earth Hour supporters. So Earth Hour, when you turn off your lights in March to support climate change. But we looked at their email template and said, you're missing an opportunity here. This is getting up to 180,000 people. Why don't we just, stick a link on there to like the Facebook page? It doesn't cost them anything financially apart from a small tweak to the template, but it really works. And then last, in terms of the rules, it's a really handy acronym to help when you're planning any kind of social activity, so be it a blog or a Twitter profile or a set of guidelines or some kind of internal initiative, whatever it might be, however big or small. If you work through this acronym, you'll normally have a fairly thorough approach. So basically, and we'll work through this after the break, but think about the people. So going back to that technographic, you can think about what your audience's social activities are. So these people that we want to attract, are they creators, editors? Are they just want to consume? And if so, what do we want them to consume? Objectives, so what do you actually want to do? Do you want people to buy stuff? Do you want people to learn about stuff? Do you want people to learn about you? Do you want people to connect with one another? Strategy, plan for how relationships with those people will change. So, do you want them to know X or buy B, whatever that might be. And once you've worked out PO and S, you've got a fairly good understanding for your audience and what you want to do. And it's only then that you look at technology. And that's the the punchline, I guess, is that when lots of people look at social, they think, well, we've got to have a YouTube channel. And you say, well, why? So, well, it's YouTube. Everyone's got one. Or our competitors have got one. That's often a common pushback. Which is the worst reason for getting into anything, because you don't know why you're there, you don't know how to measure it. If someone in legal pops up and says, hang on, that's a bit risky, you've got no benefit or objective to push back with and say, actually, this is what we're going for. So basically, go through all of these things and then think, actually, if we're doing something which people just want to read, is Twitter the best thing because that's really interactive? Or if we've got loads of people that really want to upload stuff, and this website that we had in our head has got no functionality for that, then what are we doing? So work through that, and you should have a robust way of approaching stuff. Cool, thanks everyone.